Guess we're going now.
Yes, sir.
All right. I want to welcome everybody to the Transportation Technical Coordinating Committee meeting today. We've got some folks in the room. Just want to welcome everybody, and Andy is going to do the roll call.
Thank you very much. Can you all hear us okay? Can somebody give us a thumbs up? Okay, good. Good, okay, good. From Bullitt County, we have Keith Griffey. How about Judge Jerry Summers? Felicia Harper? City of Charlestown, Mayor Treva Hodges. City of J-Town, Mayor Bill Derrick or Matt Mounier. I see Matt, we'll count Matt. Hey, Matt. From the City of Jeffersonville, Mayor Mike Moore. Andy Crouch. Chad Reichel. Okay. City of Mount Washington, I see Lori there, or there's Mayor and Lori. Hi. Hi, folks. Elizabeth Harden, see her. City of New Albany, Mayor Jeff Gahan, John Rosenbarger, Christian Strapes, or Larry Summers. Okay. City of Shepherdsville, Mayor Hockenberry. Anybody joining you? All right. Arthur Jones.
Yeah, I believe Arthur is.
Okay. Anybody from the City of St. Matthews, whether it be Keena Stratman or Bernie Bowling? Brian Dixon of Clark County? Jeff Baker? Amy Williams? Floyd County, Don Lopp? IDEM, Sean Seals? NDOT, Kathy Eaton McCallop?
I'm sitting in for her, Taylor Heron.
Yeah. Emmanuel Nsanwu? Tony McClellan? Robin Bolte? Carly Metcalf? Anybody else? Okay, thank you. Jefferson Riverport? Miguel is here. Miguel, you want to introduce yourself?
Good afternoon. My name is Miguel Zamora. I'm with the Louisville Riverport Authority. So it's my first meeting I've been able to attend. I'm glad to be here.
Well, thanks for being here. It's a unique one. It's our hybrid meeting. So for the folks out there in the cyberspace, there's 7 of us here in the room. Skip the boardroom. So we hope to see you soon at future meetings. Kentucky DAQ, Leslie Potts. From KYTC, Sadie Middleton. Here. Sadie's here in the room. Mikhail Pelfrey. Steve Ross. Here. Steve Ross is in the room too. Thomas Witt. Haven't seen Thomas. KYTC District 5. Tom Hall, Matt Bullock, Tracy Lovell. See Tom's name.
Tom Hall's here.
Hey, Tom.
Yeah, Larry Cheney's joining us too.
Okay. Hey, Larry. From Office of Transportation Delivery, either Eric Perez, Derek Morris, or Tabitha Martin. Who do we have from Metro APCD? I see Michelle.
Hello.
Anybody else, Michelle? Craig, I see Craig, or Craig's got a comment. All right, thank you all for joining us. How about Mike King or Rachel Casey? Jeff O'Brien, Beth Stuber, Emily Liu, or Joe Riverman. From Public Works, who do we have? I saw Amanda and Dirk. Anybody else from Public Works? Okay. From the airport, Dan Mann, Bob Slattery, Brian Sinwell. Oldham County, I think I saw Jim Silverman.
Jim Urban here.
Yep. Jim Urban, you're here too? Good.
Yep.
Thank you all. Anybody else from the county?
Not today.
Okay. Ports of Indiana, Jeff Miles or George Ott. About Bill Wright. Town of Clarksville. Did I see Brittany's name on there? I think I do. Yeah. Hey, Brittany. Kevin Beatty, Mike Keeling, Ryan Ramsey? Hearing none. And Tark? See Ms. Butler there. Hi, Carrie.
Hello.
And I don't see anybody else from Tark. Okay, we definitely have a point.
All right, thank you, Andy. And I will say, before we do the minutes, if there's anybody that has, if there's the public's out there and you want to, go ahead and go into the chat feature, is that right, Greg?
Correct.
Go into the chat feature if you have a comment, and we'll get to that in just a few minutes. At this time, we need, a motion. I'm hoping that everyone had a chance to read the minutes. Is there a motion to accept the minutes?
Motioned.
You have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Second, thanks, Matt. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, either raise your hand, say aye, however you all want to do it.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none, passes, thank you. All right, the TPC report, Andy's going to give us that right now.
Okay, thank you, Keith. It's been a long summer, I guess. We haven't met, TPC has not met since May 27th. So school was going on then, and now it's going on again, I guess. It'll be a long summer. At the May meeting of the TPC, we went over, David presented the Amendment 3 to our MTP and TIP document. That was subsequently approved by TPC, and it's well underway. We're already moving on to Amendment 4 for that matter, too. Also in May was the CRISA funding. Amanda Spencer spoke about that and which projects were designated to receive that funding. David talked a little bit about Amendment 4. Amendment 4, that is, to our long-range plan and TIP. We just got back from APCD just this week. Some of our air quality conformity documentation, so we're in real good shape. That's targeting an October amendment or approval by both this body and the TPC. Dane Hoskins, in Nick's absence that week, or that month, talked a little bit about some of the KIPTA dedicated funding programs, and then Amanda Spencer presented on the TIP administrative modifications, as we typically might do. So that concludes that report, Keith.
All right, thank you, Andy. At this time, we'll see, Greg, are there any public comment? I don't see any, I don't think there's any from here, so is there any online?
There was none on chat, and we did not receive any prior by email either.
Okay, all right, no public comment, thank you. At this time, Nick, I know Nick's out there, you're up with a quarterly review of the MPO dedicated programs.
All right, thank you so much. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yeah.
Good deal. All right, let me go ahead and share my screen. We'll have a presentation for you all. So this quarter, well, let me back up. For those who are maybe new, this is a quarterly item that I bring to the committees on a regular basis. The Indiana project sponsors are required to have quarterly meetings. For our Kentucky project sponsors, we have semi-annual meetings. And so this past quarter, we did not have the Kentucky project review meeting, and therefore we did not ask for progress reports from them. But we did have our Indiana meetings, and there was a lot going on. As you can see from as you'll see on my final slide, we have a kind of a funding swap that needs to be approved. If everything is okay with you all, I'll get into the details of that in a minute. But this is basically an opportunity to present progress on how our sponsors are spending the MPO dedicated funds. So the Transportation Policy Committee has the authority to award funds from 4 programs in Indiana and 2 from Kentucky. And this is just an ongoing report that we provide each quarter. So here we go. For Indiana, their fiscal year, their federal fiscal year, their state and federal fiscal year align. That ended at the end of June, June 30th, 2021. The project sponsors did get every single dollar programmed. As you can see on the left, we've got the rows that are the programmed amount for each program, the obligated amount, and how much has been unobligated. That final obligation of $300,000 was made. That was for the Charlestown Road Complete Streets project where they're adding sidewalks over there in Floyd County. And so I can say that, yeah, it was very successful. Everybody spent every single penny that we had in our account. And so sponsors are already turning their attention to fiscal year 2020, where we've already had a few obligations. The Every Commute Counts program received its annual obligation of funds, as well as the CARE APC program. And I believe those contracts are also in the works as well. Any questions on the Indiana fiscal year 2021 status? All right. Moving on to Kentucky, we are wrapping up the end of fiscal year 2021. So the fiscal year ends September 30th, 2021. We've got about 45 days or so for additional projects to be obligated in time. Again, in Kentucky, we only receive funds in the Surface Transportation Block Grant Program and the Transportation Alternatives Program. We started the year in the STBG program with about $58 million programmed. That's about 3 years worth of programming. And as many of you know, we have a carryover balance that we are definitely focused on cutting, meaning spending more than $21 million per year in order to cut down on that balance. In this past quarter, there was about $4 million in obligations made. Some of those obligations include Bullitt County's Kentucky 44 project was obligated for their preliminary engineering funds. A portion of the funds for Metro's one-way to two-way street conversion was included, as well as the APCD's CARE program, which was funded with STPG dollars for the first time in a while this fiscal year. In the Transportation Alternatives Program, there was $300,000 obligated. Those were for preliminary engineering on Louisville Metro's Blanton Lane and Newburgh Road sidewalks. So the big picture here is in order to cut down on the balance of funds, we need this obligation number here to hit more than $21 million. Obviously, the more the better. I know that KYTC and project sponsors are working like crazy to get projects moving forward. And as is kind of typical, the last 2 months, we normally see the highest number of obligations. So hopefully we see more of those there, as well as in the Transportation Alternatives Program. Does anyone have any questions about the Kentucky fiscal year 21 project status? All right. Moving into the action that's being requested, we have four projects identified here, but really it's 3 projects. You can see the Clark County project is listed in both the cost increases and funding swap. So this is a little wonky in Indiana. So because we are unable to carry over funds from one fiscal year to the next in Indiana, it's either a use it or lose it system. We don't have what we call phase shifts in Indiana. So that was never written into our guidelines. So when projects are delayed or encountering roadblocks, we have to be much more creative, and funds have to be swapped between projects in order to make things happen. So the situation that's kind of driving this funding swap, as well as the cost increase, is Floyd County's replacement of Bridge 51, which is a vitally important bridge. That bridge touches Clarksville, New Albany, Clark County, and Floyd County, obviously. They had some delays with their environmental document, which then led to some delays with the right-of-way. Right-of-way is scheduled to be obligated this fiscal year, but it typically takes 15 to 18 months to get right-of-way cleared, especially for a bridge project of this nature. And so rather than risking the lapse of funds in fiscal year 2023, which is when this construction phase is currently programmed, they threw out the call that, hey, can we move this to fiscal year 2024? And luckily enough, we had 2 projects, one in Clark County and one in Clarksville, that had enough funds programmed in fiscal year 2024 and were advanced enough in their projects to be able to move those construction phases up one fiscal year. So essentially the change is this: Clark County's intersection improvements, which is a roundabout that they're going to put at County Road 403 and Stacy Road. They're going to move their utilities from fiscal year 23 to 2022, and then move their construction from 24 to 2023. Likewise, Clarksville's Riverside Drive reconstruction project is going to move their construction from 24 to 23, which enables the Bridge 51 project to move back 1 year from fiscal year 23 to 24. Now, to make all of this work, there was a difference in funding. And so Clark County put in a request to receive $108,000 federal for their utility phase. They already had this funding programmed in fiscal year 23, but because we can't move money around like that, like we can in Kentucky, we're bringing this to you as a cost increase. But just know this was always the cost. It was always funded. I know that was a lot of information, but this is kind of a unique situation. And thankfully, all of our partners worked together to make sure we could make this happen. So the action that's being requested is to recommend that TPC approve the cost increase and the funding swap. I can take any questions if there are any.
Anything for Nick? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to accept the report that Nick has given on the dedicated on the funding swap and the increases?
This is Carrie Butler. I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Carrie. Is there a second?
Second, Jim Urban.
Thank
There you go.
Jim. We got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you all.
And let's see. All right. The next is the KYTC shift. I'm going to let Andy talk about what we've discussed before the meeting today. So
Okay.
go ahead.
I've got a brief presentation just to give an update and talk about where we are, and then we'll talk about what this committee even wants to do next from there. So this month, we fully expected that this TTCC meeting and subsequent TPC meeting would be the ones where we took the shift boost to you guys for approval. However, there's delayed slightly from the cabinet getting the scores from the project. You might recall back in April and May, we submitted our project for sponsorship. Sponsorship was the first cut that said, hey, these are the projects that this region wants to see scored through KYTC's quantitative and qualitative, I suppose, scoring system. So we did that. And then we submitted those right alongside each of the highway districts did as well. So in our case, KYTC District 5 submitted their projects as well. So over the summer, they've been verifying the data. Project descriptions were tinkered with, changed slightly just to fit the scoring system a little bit better. And they've been scored. So we just got those scores back just this past week. Okay, and so they expect from us. Hold on just a second. To get our action on boosts, instead of September 10th or 14th, which was the previous schedule, they've given us a little bit of leeway, and so it's not due till September 24th, which is perfect for KIPTA because KIPTA's TPC meeting in September will be on September 23rd. Okay, so I guess if you take nothing else from this presentation, we're delaying that by a month. Okay, we're delaying that expected action by a month. So September TTCC or TTCC working group will be the critical meeting time. Okay, so here's the numbers that we talked about this from before. Getting back to the sponsorship idea, we at KIPTA MPO had 49 sponsorships. Again, that cut was not very deep. That was choosing 49 projects after KYTC District 5 chose a total of 67 across their district. So so all those projects, our 49, their 67, along with counterpart agencies around the state, those projects were scored in the SHIP scoring system. So now we're moving on to what's called the boost phase, okay? So for those that don't recall from a couple years ago in the prior iterations of SHIP, here's a little bit about where we're at now, okay? So what we've been asked to do now is to boost projects. A boost to a project is additional points that are added to the scores that come out of their KYTC process, okay? So all the projects, they now have scores. Those scores were just released just last week, okay? And so now, just like there was a sponsorship project process that the district offices and the ads and the NPOs went through, now there's a boost process. So we come back to these boosts, okay? So what these are meant to do is account for some local priorities or regional priorities that the score might not account for very well. So that total score, the total score that we end up with, the total score that matters most would be the score that came out of the scoring system that they just processed over the summer, plus any boost that the Transportation Cabinet might assign to a project, plus a boost from the MPO, and in other areas, plus the boost from the ad. There can't be boost from MPO and ad, it's one or the other. But so what that means is that there's a total of 15 points that we could boost by the MPO and by KYTC for what's called a turbo boost up to 30 additional points. So if that project came out of the scoring system scoring a 50, and KYTC District 5 said, we really like that project, it's a high priority of ours, they might assign one of their boosts to it. That would give it 15 more points, bumping it up to 65. And then if in our case, the MPO said that we agree, that's a great project too, that would, when we assigned one of our boosts to it, that would be 15 more points. So the total of 30 additional points, that 50 grows to 80. I remember last time, or one of the prior iterations, there's like, well, can we split these boost points up? No, we cannot split the boost points up. You have to apply 15 points to each project, okay? So here's by the numbers on the boosts. KYTC, District 5 that is, has 33 boosts. So they've got an 8-county region, so not all of those would be in the MPO area, okay? KIP to MPO has been allocated or allotted 21 boosts. So in essence, we need to pick our 21 most favorite projects that are in the mix, okay? So what we plan to do is boost after KYTC does. So we are awaiting their boosts. KYTC will be boosting their projects really soon, and so we'll have more information by the 1st of September in that regard. So here's some things just to be thinking about as we lead into the next few weeks. Like that first cut of sponsorship was not very deep, right? We had what was it, 49 projects plus 67, those added together to create 100 and some odd projects. The end result, anyways, was about 103 projects in the KIP to MPO region. It might be a couple less than that because with a couple roadways that overlap the KIP to ad region, it might be 101 or 102, but nonetheless, 100 projects. We can only boost 21, so we can only boost about 20%. So if that first cut wasn't very deep, this cut is extremely deep. So it is going to be trickier to choose those projects for boosts, okay? I mentioned before that we're going to boost after KYTC. That will allow us or allow the TPC and the TTCC or TTCC working group to react to what they have done. Because these funds that these projects are competing for in the highway plan, you know, it's a competitive process. These projects, these scores are going to go up against the rest of the North region. That North region is districts 5, 6, and 7. So the Louisville, Lexington, and Cincinnati region. So it's really competitive, and so we might need to take that into consideration. Is what I suggest. Another thing, so we might want turbo boost. Turbo boost, that is, sponsor the same projects that the cabinet chooses to boost. Boost the same projects the cabinet chooses to boost. A couple other things to consider is the project status. It makes a lot of sense to boost projects that are pretty far along to ensure that they continue to be part of the highway plan. Okay? So that's something to consider. The project shift score, right? We'll have those available to share very soon. What score did the project get through their scoring system over the summer? There's probably projects on the list that scored so poorly that it really probably doesn't, quite frankly, doesn't make a lot of sense to boost. It wouldn't move them up high enough to even think, if funding was, there's surplus funding, they could maybe find room in the highway plan. So maybe we might want to shy away from sponsoring some of those. Then, as always, we need to focus on what the local priorities are of the KIP to TTCC and the KIP to TPC. While we can sponsor whatever we want out of those 101 projects, we can sponsor ones that KYTC really loves. We can sponsor the ones that members of this body really love. That'll be part of the tough decision. So that's just food for thought. A lot of these things are, okay. I think that's all I have on this presentation. And so I guess, Keith, you want me to go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead.
So what I thought we might do, and unless there's some objection by this committee, next month's scheduled TTCC date is on September 8th at 1 o'clock, okay? Currently, at this time, we don't have a number of agenda items that need committee action, okay? Shift is very much a key agenda item that we will have for action. So what I thought we'd propose is, instead of meeting as we might typically do, let's make that date and time, a TTCC working group where the Kentucky members from the counties, from Metro, from TARC, Kentucky people that are very interested in SHIFT, to participate in a working group meeting instead of a TTCC meeting. If there's, because otherwise I think what we need to do, what we can't do, I guess is what I should say, is do what we did last time, that is meet county by county. I'm not sure how that would work in the boosting process, because the cut is so deep this time, so to speak. So, unless there's, Keith, I guess I'll hand it back to you.
Yeah, and what we can do is open this up if anybody has discussion. I think, and Andy and I talked about this a little bit before the meeting, and quite honestly, I think you've got a great idea doing this. If we go back to the slide, what Boost actually does, to me, it looks like we have to come up with a philosophy to make sure that we are getting projects in. And again, the competition is not just between our counties here; it's between it's all over. And so I think we have to come up with what's the best way to do this. I know every county is going to say all my projects are the best projects. I'm fully prepared to say Bullitt County needs to get everything we can get. But we have to look at how this breaks down and see what's the best philosophy for this. And I think we can do that in a working group better than we can maybe in just a regular meeting. So I think this kind of falls in a good place for us, to tell you the truth. That's my opinion.
If we don't meet in a TTCC during that date and time, I think we're going to still want to have that meeting.
Yes.
Okay, so that is something that we would be inviting folks to. Right. Around the first week, around that time. The timing works very nicely, quite honestly. We expect the Transportation Cabinet, District 5 to develop their list for Boost here in the next week or two, and so we'll have that in place by around, by 1st September, last week of August, that time frame.
So all this kind of falls into place where this can be a real advantage for us. But we're open, if there are other ideas or any other discussion, please just jump in.
Hey, this is Carrie Butler. I think the September 8th working meeting makes a lot of sense. I had two questions. One is, when did you say the TPC meeting was? The next one?
Meeting, yeah, so the September meeting is on September 23rd. Okay?
At 1:30?
It would be at 12:30.
Okay.
On the 4th, 3rd, 5th September, right. So there will be an August TPC meeting, by the way. It's the regular scheduled meeting on the, let's see, it'll be on the 26th, August 26th. So again, we're not proposing that we'd have action on shift at that time.
Okay, gotcha. And then and you might have said this in the beginning, and I'm familiar with shift from working in Lexington. Are the projects that get scored and ranked and then boosted or turbo boosted, those are all KYTC sponsored projects? Like, does the list of the projects that we score and boost come solely from KYTC and the other localities, or is it the MPO's plan that we're boosting?
So the projects that are eligible to be boosted are a subset of the projects that were sponsored back in the spring. Okay, that made that first cut. So in our area, in the MPO areas, very specifically, the Transportation Cabinet sponsored a few dozen of their projects. Okay, after they did that, those were in. Those were getting scored. Those were moving on to the next phase. Then the KIP to TPC, after TTCC recommendation, by the way, chose to sponsor, I believe the number is like 49 additional projects. Those projects were a mix of other KYCC projects. In Bullitt County's case, there was a couple, I think, I-65 and Study 44 projects. So KYCC projects on state routes or interstates. But additionally, there were some of the local priorities were on there too. I can think of Metro's Reimagine 9th Street, but one example of that's on there. So that project has gone through the scoring system, even though that is not a KYTC project on a KYTC-owned roadway.
Okay. So just, I mean, and I'm not trying to go after a turbo boost or anything for a TARC project, but if we got to the point that there was a TARC sponsored project, could it get in this list to get a boost? Or scored? Or is it only projects that began with the KYTC?
It was projects, so back in the spring,
Well, no, I mean, I guess I'm more asking theoretically.
So could a TARC project could it have been sponsored in the springtime? The answer to that question is yes, I suppose it could have.
Okay.
But you may remember us talking about around that time that via previous iterations of shift and without major changes to the scoring system, which there were minor changes to the scoring system this time, not major ones, I suppose, that certain projects are not going to score well, that they're going to score, closer to 0 points than I suppose to the 50, 60 points that are the highest scoring projects that have been out of the system. So yes, I think they are open to many project types, with some exceptions with committed projects that they identified, a couple other exceptions, including those that are funded through some of those programs that Nick was just mentioning. For example, if it's completely programmed to be completely funded through STBG funds or TAP funds, for example, then it also wasn't eligible as well.
Okay. All right. That helps. And I just wanted to make sure that I kind of understood where the projects kind of started. And now I know that if we have a TARC thing, we got to start lobbying early to get into the mix. Like, I'm just kidding.
Well, this is a KIPTA person saying it, not a KYC person, but they are in the room, by the way. They've given us some assurance that the next shift scoring process will, the intent is to make it so that, maybe the more urban type of projects might score a little bit better than it has in the past, because I think that has been something that this body has noticed in the past, and I don't think that's, I think that's the real thing in that case, the real deal.
All right.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thanks, Gary. Any other questions?
This is Tom Hall. I'd like to sort of add in some comments about Carrie's question about can a TARC project get in this process. I would just like to characterize the process is where every 2 years the Transportation Cabinet prepares a highway plan, a funding plan that's 2 years of funding for transportation projects, and it's primarily road type projects. Not so many transit projects because there's not really a whole lot of dedicated transit funding that gets identified in in the highway plan each year. But
Hence my question.
right.
You're
so
answering my question.
Right. And so the easiest thing to do is to, do a little research and go and look and see what kind of projects are in the highway plan, the current highway plan, see how transit is funded through the highway plan, if it is at all. And I've been doing this for quite a while, and I don't recall too many specific transit projects flowing through the 6-year plan process. They flow through the Office of Transportation Delivery and other mechanisms, using largely FTA type funding, not FHWA type funding. But it's possible. But I guess my point is if you want a project to compete, you have to really start early. And the first step of this process really wasn't mentioned yet today. It's getting your project in KYTC's unscheduled needs database. And it's you can work with the KIPTA MPO or the KIPTA ad or any ad or MPO in the state to get a project in the state's CHAF database. And that's where we talk about eligibility and whether a project makes sense to put in the database to even compete in the shift process. But right now, we're not really in a position to accept new projects right now. What we're trying to do is move forward with the identified projects and see which ones make the most sense to fund. And once we identify those through this process we're doing, we'll suggest a funding schedule, and that will eventually become the highway plan, assuming they accept our recommendations up there in the legislature and the governor's office. So I hope that adds a little context to your that help answer your question.
Yeah, thank you. I will say this is the first year, and we're very, very grateful to KYTC. This is the first year that TARC and the other transit agencies in the state will have ever received more money from Kentucky than Indiana. So for 30 years, we've been trying to I've been saying the same thing. Oh, we get more money from Indiana than Kentucky, but I can't say that anymore. So thank you to KYTC for your inaugural commitment to better fund transit. And let's hope this is a continued path to better fund public transportation.
Well, this whole process is to identify the best projects to use limited resources. So may the best project win.
Any other questions or comments? Carrie, you're quite the lobbyist. Anything else? I want to cut this off, and if anybody's got anything else. All right, so it looks like we've got a working group for September 8th at 1 o'clock.
Be looking for an invitation from us shortly, with some additional details. We'll have the nitty-gritty to go along with it, too.
That'll be great. Thanks, Andy. All right, Andy, you're still up for the KIPTA Performance Management Plan.
Okay, so we've got a unique set of performance measures to add to our KIPTA PMP this month. You guys probably seen me up here talking about safety performance measures from the highway side. We've got some, we got all sorts of bridge and pavement ones in there too. But today we're going to talk about some TARC safety performance measures. So just as a recap, KIPTA maintains a regional performance management plan. Last updated back in April. Back in April, you may recall us speaking about making some changes at what they call the mid-period or mid-performance period update. And so we made some of those changes, some pretty minor changes based on some comments that we had received from NDOT and some of the changes that they had made that both KIPTA, or excuse me, KYTC and NDOT had made to what's called the truck travel time reliability measures. Today's is not about that. So you can see all the different types of performance measures we have on our screen, on your screen there. Today we're going to talk about that bottom middle part. We've got two sets of TARC developed performance measures. One deals with asset management, age of the fleet type thing, condition of the facilities, etc. But brand new to our performance management plan, are gonna be these safety targets, okay? So TARC just recently, earlier this year, adopted what's called their version of a Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan, okay? There's just, you can see a bit of their cover there. So that's brand new to TARC, or it's a new one to TARC, and basically this safety plan is required through both MAP 21 and FAST Act, basically some of the similar requirements that required a lot of those Federal Highway Administration performance measures that we've spoken probably more about, quite frankly, than we have FTA-related ones. It's required in TARC because they receive certain FTA funds, but TARC and transit agencies across the country are required to develop their performance targets in a prescribed manner, prescribed 7 targets, I believe, I'll show you in a second, and share those and make them available to both the states and MPOs. So in the KIPTA case, in the KIPTA region, or perhaps in other regions, let's say that, where there's multiple transit agencies, it's up to the MPO to maybe mesh them together from the multiple transit agencies to come up with some regional targets. In our case, we propose to adopt TARC's safety targets as they've adopted them in their safety plan. So here are the targets. So these, kind of fall in line in certain ways with the what we call the PM1 targets that I've presented, or somebody from KIPTA has presented each of the last several years. In as much as they talk about a total number of fatalities, fatality rate. Okay, TARC has set their target at 0 fatalities. There have been fatalities in the past, so the fatality rate is just north of 0. Maybe I take a step back here. I'd be remiss to mention this, but these were developed looking back, as I understand it, looking back over the last 5 years to help develop these targets. Okay, so looking back more specifically at the NTD database, National Transit Database. Okay, that's where TARC and even our Every Commute Counts program has to submit some data on a regular basis. Among it is safety data. Okay, so TARC looked at that data to help develop these targets. Okay, so fatalities, super low fatalities. Fatalities are very rare, but we should certainly target very few, if 0. The target is 0, I should say, going forward. On the injury front, there's you can see the injury targets there, and you see up here the injury rate. So there's 3 rates: fatality rate, injury rate, safety event rate. Those rates, for those that aren't familiar with VRM, those are the number of those events, fatalities, injuries, or safety events, per 100,000 vehicle revenue miles. Okay? So in TARC's case, I think the number is in the 10 to 15 million VRM a year, if I'm not mistaken. So the math should add up there to something in that range. Okay? So we've got fatalities, injuries, safety events, and then at the oddball one out there on the right is system reliability. Those are the number of miles between, I guess, a major mechanical failure. Okay, so you see we have two rows here: fixed route, traditional buses, paratransit. So 5,478 miles between mechanical failure, I believe, is the way we should understand that one. So I believe that's all I have. If there's anything that Carrie, if you'd like to add anything, we'd be happy to hear your thoughts on this. If there's anything you got to add, otherwise we'd be seeking this committee's recommendation for approval by the TPC later in the month.
Thank you for that explanation, and I'm happy to take questions too.
Okay, let's go ahead and get a motion in a second, and we'll open for discussion. Is there a motion to accept the plan, the performance management plan, as presented?
So move. Barry Armstrong.
And thank you, Mayor. Is there a second?
I'll second. Jim Silliman.
Thanks, Jim. We have a motion and a second. Now we can open up for discussion. Andy or Carrie, either one. Is there any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, Andy. All right. Andy and Will, you all are up. Andy, if you want to get us started on the Metro presentation on
Sure.
Vision Zero.
Sure, looking to see on the screen, Dirk, would you like to say anything? We have Will Conkin from Palmer Engineering on the line to help to present what's known as a Vision Zero Louisville plan. I think that's something that you guys will find very interesting. Dirk, would you like to present Will and introduce him?
Yeah, so Metro was asking that we get the involvement from KYTC in a local safety plan. We have a statewide plan, but the statewide plan, of course, much of Kentucky is rural in nature, and so the crashes we have here and the fatalities, there's some differences between the statewide data, and so KYTC, Mike Vaughn with the Highway Safety Improvement Program funds. We hired Palmer to prepare that report for us. They looked through a lot of data and went down a few rabbit holes, I think, but they came up with a good systemic crash analysis for Jefferson County, gave us an action plan that we can start executing, and we have started executing. Some of the street right sizing, the 4 lanes to 3 lanes, was something that was recommended from that plan. So Palmer's done a great job with this. We finished it last year, and I'll let Will Conkin with Palmer Engineering explain more.
Thank you, Dirk. I want to try to share my screen real quick. All right. So thank you for the opportunity to present on the Vision Zero Louisville Safety Report. The project, like Dirk mentioned, was the first one of its kind for KYTC and Louisville Metro, and the consultant team was really excited about it and had a really, I think, a very effective report to come out of it. The consultant team consisted of Palmer, HDR, and Integrated Engineering. So like Dirk mentioned, KYTC partnered with Louisville Metro, and I'm going to give a little bit of a background to why they partnered. But they initiated the Vision Zero Louisville project to develop a data-driven process to identify and prioritize projects. Focus for the project was on non-interstate streets and roadways in Jefferson County. So no interstates were involved, and place an emphasis on preventing serious injuries and fatality crashes for all modes, pedestrian, bicyclist, vehicles. Prior to this study, Louisville Metro had previously noticed a trend in Jefferson County that was unlike the rest of the state. One of those trends was the increase in roadway fatalities. The chart shows here that the fatal crashes are broken down in bicycle, pedestrian, and vehicles between 2006 and 2018. In Jefferson County, on non-interstate roadways and streets, you can see here that blue is your pedestrian, green is represents your bicycle crashes, and you can see an increase in fatal crashes between 2011 and 2017. And what's unique about this is that in 2017, there was a 10% spike in Jefferson County fatal crashes, but there was a decrease of 6% in the state in 2017. One of those contributors of that big difference was pedestrian fatalities. You also notice that the pedestrian fatalities increased from 2012 to 2018. And there was a spike of bicycle fatal crashes in 2018. This all is given, it gave Louisville concern. And so with the noticeable trend of 23% of fatal fatalities on metro roadways were pedestrian fatalities, they embarked on additional studies. They performed a detailed study on the pedestrian crashes and published the master plan with the vision for Louisville to become the safest and most appealing community for pedestrians. They also did additional study that did a 5-year projection crash analysis to identify trends, high-risk populations, and high-risk or high crash locations. Following the studies, Louisville Metro began coordinating with Mike Vaughn and Jason Swalla and the KYTC because of these big differences between Jefferson County and the state. And, you know, Louisville Metro also shared their long-term commitment to joining Vision Zero network of cities. This is the map taken of the Vision Zero cities. And you can see that not too many are in the vicinity of Kentucky, and most of them are on the coast. So why Vision Zero? Why? First, it's important to know why we're doing what we're doing. So why are we establishing a long-term vision of zero fatalities? It's because the cost of fatal and serious injury crashes are just too much, not only to the immediate families and individuals who are severely injured or killed, but just also to society. So the numbers here is an average cost in Kentucky of a fatal crash is just shy of 9.3 million. Now, the following slides are going to have some dollars associated with them, and they're 2017 dollars if it's talking about Kentucky dollars. And these are specific to Kentucky. They're not a national average. They're based on Kentucky specific data. So the average cost of a serious injury crash is just over $530,000. And when you consider the societal cost, these are societal costs, which is also known as comprehensive. And they're meant to capture all the impacts that result from the crash. So it's every piece that it's not just the damage of the vehicle. It's not just the damage to the person. It's lost wages, it's insurance, it's everything that's all in comprehensive. So in Kentucky in 2017, we had a societal cost of $8.9 billion, while the U.S. had $433 billion. So this kind of breaks down the CAPCO cost. You've got K for killed, A for suspected serious injury, B for minor injury, and C possible injury, and O is property damage only. And you can see from those costs off the side that as the severity decreases, the cost is lesser. So preclude this, that we did a crash study for the Vision Zero, and we looked at between 2013 and 2017 crash data. So this chart shows the 127,000 crashes that we looked at during that time period and applied the comprehensive cost per crash to the crash severities and came up with almost $8 billion. If you take the top two, the fatal and serious injury, and this kind of adds the emphasis, the significance to while we look at fatal and serious injury crashes, is that they make up 2% of all Louisville crashes, but resulted in 57% of the cost of the user and society at large. The Vision Zero Louisville Safety Report, it covers the systemic approach to safety. It also covered how the risk factors were identified and how they were used to prioritize projects. But due to today's time and to subject, we're going to just discuss on the identified areas of opportunity and how they relate to the statewide averages or areas of opportunities identified in the previous two strategic highway safety plans. The first step in the project was to start with a database. We collected lots of data, and I guess I need to give a shout out to KIPTA for being part of the process. They gave us a lot of data and gave us a lot of insight on helping us complete the report. We started out with Kentucky's HIS data, Kentucky State Police crash data, UK's transportation centers data, Metro data, and some speed data from the big data companies. All this data was collected and we compiled to a usable database. Just quickly, we started out in Jefferson County with 157,000 crashes between 2013 and 2017. We removed just over 26,000 crashes that were on the interstates. Due to some spatial issues with the data, we had to remove 2%, or just about 3,500 crashes, because we couldn't adjoin them to a GIS data. So we were left with 127,174 crashes. Here's what we call a heat map or a density. for all the crashes in that 127,000. You can see that there's some familiar corridors like 31W, Preston Highway, Bardstown Road, Shelbyville Road, where the higher frequency of crashes occurred. You can also see that there's a higher density of crashes in the downtown area.
Can I ask a question, Will?
Absolutely.
Is that on that prior heat map slide? Are those crashes in downtown proper or on I-65? Or kind of like it's hard to tell from there?
Well, we took out any crash that was coded as being on interstate, whatever. So anything that was coded as that.
Okay, thank you.
It's so K and A crashes. So since the focus, like I mentioned, the report focused on fatal and serious injury crashes. This is the density of the fatal and serious injury crashes, and you can see where maybe some corridors appear differently. Cane Run sticks out a little bit more than it did previously, and then a little bit more of the West End shows up differently than previously. And I'll pop back so you can look at maybe the West End difference when you start talking about this area in here versus when it's in here, when you're looking at just KAs. So that can mean a lot of things, and it's kind of important to us the way we look at it because the emphasis was on K&A crashes. So over time, the serious injury crashes trended down between 2013 and 2017, which is your dark blue on top, and then but the fatal crashes continue to increase through the crash period, which is the lighter blue down at the bottom. At the very beginning of doing a crash analysis, we kind of stepped back and did like an broader view of a crash analysis before we got down into the weeds. And one of the things that really stuck out to us was 53% of all the fatal and serious injury crashes occurred on 16 routes. Those 16 are highlighted there, but the top ones were, of course, US 31W, which was 9% of the KAs, US 31E, which is 5%, and then 1934, which is part of that would be Cane Run, was about 4%. This crash data, if you notice the time period, is not when Dixie Highway was completed with this recent construction. So the areas of opportunity, just so everybody's kind of on the same page, that's familiar with reports, we changed the words emphasis areas to areas of opportunity. Just so we're all on the same page. It's nothing new, it's just we've changed the term. So at the beginning of the project, when we first started, the 2015 to 2019 strategic highway safety plan was current. And then before we finished, the current 2020 to 2024 plan was released. For the report, we referenced the areas of opportunities from the statewide safety plans and then compared them to what areas of opportunities were identified in the Vision Zero Louisville Safety Plan. You can see that from a couple of changes between the statewide plan, which are, previously commercial vehicle was an emphasis area or area of opportunity, and so was vehicle management. And new mature drivers was in a previous version, but then it was dropped in the current version. The Vision Zero Louisville plan identified all areas of opportunity from the current plan, plus the new mature drivers, 4-lane highways, environmental justice areas, and lighting. And this is an eye chart. And there's a lot of data. I don't want to, go through too much of it, but this kind of exemplifies why something was chosen as an emphasis area. So what you've got is your upper areas of opportunity over here, and you've got your crash data, all crashes, serious injury crashes, and fatal crashes. And then you've got the previous strategic highway safety plan, the current one, and then whether or not these were all on the Vision Zero action plan. So to start with, we had intersections. So 55% of all fatal crashes occurred in an intersection in Jefferson County. The current plan for Kentucky, so statewide, only 16% of the fatal crashes occurred in an intersection. And I'm not going to, I hate to fast forward, but if you look right below here, most of us know that roadway departure is a main area of opportunity for the statewide, because 64% of all the fatal crashes are roadway departure type crashes. The project team elected to keep roadway departure as a area of opportunity, not because of the 20% of the crashes occurred on fatal roads, but in addition to that, only 9% of the roadway departure crashes, or 9% of all crashes are roadway departure crashes, but 20% of the fatal crashes are roadway departure crashes. So there's an overrepresentation of the kill crashes, fatal crashes, and all crashes. So, and I'll go into some of these later, but non-motorized or pedestrian and bicycles is a big difference. Only 2% of 2% of all crashes are pedestrian or bicycles, while 29% of all fatal crashes are pedestrian or bicyclists. And when you compare it to the state, it's only 11%. So it's significantly overrepresented. Same thing with motorcycles. Same thing with impaired driving. Environmental justice there's not a statewide comparison or anything statewide to compare it to, nor is there for lighting. But we'll describe the concern of environmental justice areas later. But you can see the lighting overrepresentation as compared for fatal crashes as compared to all crashes. So in Louisville, 63% of all the crashes occurred at intersections. 63% of the fatal and serious injury crashes occurred at intersection. This is a map came straight out of the report that shows the poorest performing signalized intersections. And just as a leadway, we do provide a significant amount of data in the technical appendix that has almost every list that I'm about ready to talk about has a 50 list of whatever it is that we're talking about. So some low-cost countermeasures that were identified, that are for intersections are reflective back plates, dedicated turn lanes, innovative intersections, such as a roundabout. Looking at intersections in the West End or the downtown, over time, the population is spread out and away from the West End, resulting in lower traffic volumes. So there could be a study done to see that an existing signal with that low of traffic volumes could be an issue, and removing the signal could be an improvement on safety. This was bottom left-hand side of the picture is a mini roundabout. That's another alternative for certain situations. It was just constructed in Elizabethtown. 6%, only 6% of the crashes were roadway departure crashes, but 23% of the fatal crashes were roadway departure crashes. Here's some potential roadway departure corridors that would need to be studied. Some low-cost countermeasures include striping, signing, guardrail improvements, high friction. Some more expensive countermeasures is roadway widening, shoulder widening, super elevation, rumble strips. An area of opportunity that's unique to Louisville is the 4-lane undivided roadways, where there is an overrepresentation of crashes on these types of roadways. Under certain traffic volumes, there's roadways. These roadways could function safer if they were converted to 3-lane roadways. This conversion it's often called as a roadway reconfiguration, or a road diet previously called, or right sizing the roadway. Louisville Metro and District 5 have been collaborating on these projects of late. And, the most popular reconfiguration is converting a 4-lane to a 3-lane with a 2-way left turn lane. And studies have shown that there's about a 19 to 47% reduction in all crashes. And here's a map that we did of some corridors that were identified based on the data that was available. Intersection with highest number of pedestrians. So pedestrians are the most vulnerable users on Louisville's roadway system. Although they only make up 2% of the crashes, but it's 26% of all fatal crashes. At the state level, pedestrians only make up about 11% of the fatal crashes. Between 2013 and 2017, Louisville experienced a 68% increase in pedestrian fatal and serious injury crashes, which is more than double the national average. You can see from this list of intersections that Broadway occurs several times, which relates a lot to the density that you see previously on those density maps of the KA crashes. Bicyclists is another non-motorized user that's vulnerable. Of the 760 crashes, 10% were fatal, and were fatal or serious injury crashes. 60% were less severe injuries. You can see here that there's this is the intersections that were identified as to having an intersection with bicycle crashes. So environmental justice area, this is unique to Louisville. Let me put this, I don't know that it's unique to Louisville, but it was a finding of the report that has not been seen or maybe even studied anywhere else. The study used the definition of the environmental justice area, which is a low income and or minority population in a census block that is more than twice the region's average for those groups, which is where we got this from, the KIPTA definition of environmental justice areas. The key study finding was that the crash rate per person is 2.5 times higher in these areas. You can see from the chart here, 19% of the area is an EJ area. 30% of the population is EJ. 41% of all the crashes occurred in EJ. 43% of the fatal and serious injury crashes occurred in EJ, and 63% of the pedestrian fatal and serious injury crashes occurred in the EJ area. Placing an emphasis on the EJ areas will be critical in gaining the community buy-in and achieving goals of Vision Zero. Motorcyclists are considered a vulnerable user on the roadway, and you can see that motorists motorcyclists make up about 18% of the fatal crashes. Here are a couple of driver behavior areas of opportunities that were identified. Aggressive driving trends to be an issue in Jefferson County and statewide. Aggressive driving was involved in 29% of the fatal crashes. When categorized serious injury crashes by the time of day, there's an increase in the trend from noon to 6. And then the serious injury crashes trend down from noon to 6, and then it trends down after the 6 o'clock. But if you look at fatal, it seems to be consistent from noon on. Similar trend if you do the same thing, same categorization with distracted driving. There seems to be more excessive, the increase seems to be more excessive around the PM peak hours. This could be because drivers could be more distracted driving home than driving to work. There may be more on something on their mind trying to accomplish something driving from work than driving to work. Lighting, Louisville has a significant emphasis on lighting. Louisville Metro has done a lot of work on reviewing lighting in other metropolitan areas, other cities. And so our study focused on that the best that we could. 42% of all fatal crashes occurred during low light or dark conditions. Reduced visibility during low light conditions is absolutely less safe for pedestrians. 48% of the pedestrian crashes and 85% of fatal pedestrian crashes occur during low visibility. This study, as you can see, identified signalized intersections. It also identified non-signalized intersections with a history of nighttime crashes. This is something that the data is very difficult to look through to identify whether or not adequate lighting is available, but future studies could be done to further that analysis. And that's all that I have, pending any questions. Appreciate inviting me to give a speech. I'm sorry if I went over. I forgot to hit my timer.
Okay, anything for Will? Any questions or comments? Will, thanks for that presentation. Appreciate it. All right, we'll move on. Is there any other business? Andy, do you know of anything else we need to discuss?
No, I would just add that I guess the hybrid meeting's here to stay for a little bit longer at least. And so you're welcome to join us however you see fit until further notice, whether it be here in the room, Burke room. Be happy to have you, but if you prefer to meet via Zoom, it's up to you for at least the foreseeable future, next few months anyways.
Just everybody stay tuned. We'll see what happens next.
That's right.
All right. Any other business from anybody else on the call or in the room or anywhere else? All right. Hearing no other business, is there a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn. This is Dirk.
Thanks,
Second,
Dirk.
Matt.
Matt, there's a second. All in favor? Raise your hand or say aye.
Say bye.
Yep. All right. Thank you all very much, and we will we look forward to the working meeting on the 8th. We'll see you then. Thank you.